I'm going to be telling you about every single boss in Blox Fruits, as well as some secrets that you must know about them. Okay, the very first boss of the game, the Gorilla King. It's a level 25 boss. He drops absolutely nothing and he respawns every 3 to 4 minutes. You get a total of 2,000 belly and 7,000 XP for killing the Gorilla King. And since he's the first boss of the game, he's also unfortunately the weakest boss. But then again, everyone needs to start somewhere. Alright, moving on, we got the second boss of the game, and this is Buggy the Clown. This is a level 55 boss and he respawns every 9 to 10 minutes. Once you kill Bobby, you get a reward of 8,000 belly along with 35,000 XP. And this boss does have the chop fruit, so you won't be able to do any damage to it with swords. And he's pretty powerful for a beginner boss, especially since you can't use swords. Alright, next up we got the Saw boss, and this is a level 100 boss and he has a 10% chance of dropping the Shark Saw. But overall, this is a pretty bad sword, so I don't recommend grinding him just to get it. He spawns in every 20 to 45 minutes, so you're gonna have to wait a lot of time if you want to farm this guy. Okay, so the next boss for this game is the Yeti boss. This is a level 110 boss, and he drops the Yeti for item. But he does spawn in every 5 minutes, which is normally expected for beginner bosses. He has a total of 4,600 HP, and once you kill the Yeti, you get a total of 180,000 XP along with 10,000 belly. So that's a pretty decent reward if you're starting off. And the place you find him at is at the Snow Village, at the top of the ice lake. Next up, we got a kind of secret boss that not a lot of you might know about, and this is the Mob Leader. And he can be found on a pretty secret island somewhere next to the pirate village, and this is a really small island, so it's really hard to find. The Mob Leader is a level 120 boss with a total of 2,750 HP, and he does 130 damage per hit. But this boss is the third easiest in the first sea, so it's really good for grinding bounty or honor because he literally respawns every 60 seconds. Alright, moving on to the Vice Admiral. This is a level 130 boss, and he has a 10% chance of dropping the Vice Admiral's coat. He spawns in every 7 minutes, has a total of 4,250 HP, and does 140 damage per hit. The place he can be found is at Marine Fortress in the main building at the top of the tower. And if you equip the quest for this boss and defeat him, he gives you a total of 15,000 belly along with 350,000 XP. And this is one of the first powerful bosses in the first sea, so if you're a beginner, this one's going to be pretty difficult to fight.
Hey, what happened?
Alright, moving on, next up we got the Warden, and this boss spawns at the prison island. It's a level 220 boss and it spawns in every 4 to 5 minutes. Once you kill it, it gives you a total of 6,000 belly along with 600,000 XP. And the damage it dishes out is completely unknown, but it is a pretty stacked boss because it's one of the harder islands of the first sea. But it's nothing compared to the next one. Alright, next up we got the Chief Warden, and this is a level 230 boss. It also spawns at the prison and right next to the previous boss. It drops the Warden's sword with a 5 to 10% drop chance. And once you kill it, it gives you a total of 10,000 belly along with 1 million XP. He has a total of 9,000 health and dishes out 380 damage per attack, so you gotta be pretty stacked to fight this guy. Next up, we got another boss located at the prison. Literally 3 bosses in the same place. And this one is the Swan boss. He's a level 240 boss. He has a 5% chance of dropping the pink coat accessory. And he spawns in every 30 minutes. And this boss has the spider fruit, so he's pretty difficult to fight. Once you kill him, he gives you a total of 15,000 belly along with 1,300,000 XP. He has a total of 11,000 HP and deals a whopping 139 damage per hit. On average, that is, because he has a fruit and he uses a bunch of different abilities from them. Alright, moving on, this is a boss that a bunch of you might not know about. It's the Saber Expert. It's a level 200 boss and he drops the Saber V1, which is the highest damage out of every sword in the game once you upgrade it to V2. And the way you unlock the ability to fight him is by doing the jungle quest. And overall, this guy's a pretty powerful boss and you need to defeat him if you want to get the sword along with observation hockey. And the place he's located is at the jungle, but you can only access the fight after you've completed the quest. Alright, moving on to the heavy hitters in the first sea. We got the Magma Admiral. He's a level 350 boss and he has a 10% chance of dropping the Refined Musket. Obviously, he has the Magma Fruit. And he can only use 2 abilities of the old Magma Fruit. The Z ability and the X ability. So that's not too much to worry about. He has a total of 14,500 HP and deals 284 damage per hit. So you gotta dodge all of these hits if you want to survive. Overall, he's a really solid boss and this one's definitely going to be a challenge for you first sea players. Alright, moving on to the underwater city location. We got the Fishman Lord boss, and this is a level 425 boss, and he has a 10% chance of dropping this really cool trident that literally lets you grapple all over the place. He has a spawn time of 20 minutes, and once you defeat him, you get 15,000 belly along with 4 million XP. This trident has two abilities. The first one is trident throw, and this one's the grapple ability I was talking about. And the second one is called water pulse. And this just dishes out a bunch of damage to any enemy next to you. And this boss actually has two forms. You actually have to kill him for a second time because he ends up changing forms. He has a total of 18,000 HP and deals out 472 damage per hit. So a pretty solid boss overall. Alright, moving on to Upper Sky, we got the Whisper boss. This is a level 500 boss and he has a 5% chance of dropping the bazooka. He has a 20-minute spawn time, and since he uses a gun, I mean, everyone knows how bad guns are. He has a total of 18,000 HP and he deals a whopping 946 damage per hit on average, making this guy one of the strongest bosses in the first sea. Next boss that's also located on Upper Sky, the Thunder God boss. This is a level 575 and he has a 5% chance of dropping the pole first form. And he has a spawn time of 30 minutes. And this pole is really good, but only if you upgrade it to the second form. The first one's kind of bad. And he also has the Rumble Fruit equipped, so he's pretty difficult to fight. But he can only use 2 abilities from it. And once you defeat this guy, you get a total of 20,000 belly along with 8 million XP. Overall, one of the strongest bosses in the first sea, but nothing compared to what's next. The Cyborg, and this is a level 675 boss who has a 1 to 2% chance of dropping the Cool Shades accessory. He takes 30 to 35 minutes to be spawned in. Once you kill him, he gives you a whopping amount of 10 million XP along with 20,000 belly. The Cyborg has a total of 3 different abilities that you can use. The Rocket Barrage, where he shoots a bunch of rockets that deal decent damage. Then we got the Strong Right, where his right arm extends and tries to punch you. Then we got Rising Attack, where he literally just farts on you. And to fight this boss, I just recommend ranged attacks because they work really well on him. He has a total of 30,000 HP and he deals around 700 damage per hit, making him pretty deadly. And surprise, surprise, that was not the last boss of the first sea. And some of you might have forgotten this, but there's actually another one, the Ice Admiral. This is a level 700 boss, and the place you fight him is on the Winter Island. And you can literally only fight him once, and that's when you're doing the quest to get to the second sea. He uses the Ice Fruit and he has a total of 27,500 HP. And he's a really powerful boss, literally the strongest in the first sea. Alright, moving on to the second sea. The first boss we got here is the Diamond boss. This is a level 750 boss and he has a chance of dropping the Longsword. A pretty mid sword if you ask me though. He has a 15-minute spawn time and he's located at the top of the Flower Hill. He has a total of 30,000 HP and the damage he does is completely unknown. And his quest gives you a total of 25,000 belly along with 11,500,000 XP. Pretty good if you ask me. Alright, the next boss on the second sea is the Jeremy boss, and this guy has a 5% chance of dropping you the Black Spiky Code. He spawns at the top of a hill at the far right side of the first island. And he does have the Spring Fruit equipped, so he's a bit tricky to fight. And he has a total of 35,000 HP. The damage he does is unknown, but he's a pretty mid boss for the second sea, so you should be able to defeat him easily. Alright, moving on, next boss is Vegeta, and this is a level 925 boss, and he has the power of the Gravity Fruit. He's located at the green zone, and he spawns in every 15 minutes. And if you kill him, he drops a meteorite, and he has a 10% chance of dropping the Gravity Cane. He has a total of 40,000 HP and deals around 1,000 damage per attack. And he's a pretty deadly boss to fight, but the rewards are definitely worth it. Next up, we got the Dawn Swan boss, and this is the upgraded version of the Swan boss from the first sea. He's a level 1000 boss. He spawns at Dawn Swan's mansion every 30 minutes. He has a 5% chance of dropping you the Swan glasses when you kill him, and a 100% drop chance of the Swan ship. And this one has a total of 55,000 HP, and it's the quest you do to get into the third one. Alright, next up we got the Smoke Admiral, and this is a level 1150 boss that's located at the Hot and Cold area. He has a 15% chance of dropping the Jitte sword, and he has a total of 60,000 HP. Damage he does is completely unknown, but he does use the Smoke Fruit, hence why he's called the Smoke Admiral. A pretty solid boss for the second sea. Alright, moving on, we got the Awakened Ice Admiral, and this guy's literally just a better version of the Ice Admiral from before. He's a level 1400 boss. He's located at the Ice Castle, and he spawns in every 20 minutes. He has a total of 75,000 health, and the damage he does is completely unknown. He has a 2.5 chance of dropping you the Hidden Key, which lets you open the chest to get the Rengoku sword. He also has a 15% chance of dropping the Library Key, and this one you can use to unlock Death Step. Overall, a really solid boss, but the one next is a lot stronger. Alright, next up is the Tidekeeper boss, and this is a level 1475 boss who has the power to spawn in sea beasts. He's located at the Forgotten Island and spawns it every 30 to 45 minutes. He has a 7.5% chance of dropping you the Dragon Trident, and he can drop you the Water Key with a 40% chance. And some of you might be wondering, what is the Water Key for? Well, it's to unlock the best grinding fighting style in the whole game, Sharkman Karate. Overall, he's a really powerful boss and the strongest in the second sea. Alright, moving on to the third sea. The first boss here is called Stone, and he's a level 1550 boss. He has a 10% chance of dropping you the pilot helmet, and he spawns in every 20 minutes on the first island. He has a total of 100,000 HP and does 482 damage per hit. You get 60 million XP for killing him along with 25,000 belly. Pretty good if you ask me. But then again, it is the third sea. Alright, next up we got the Island Empress, and this is a level 1675 boss and has a 10% chance of dropping the Serpent Bow. She spawns in every 25 minutes, has a total of 120,000 HP and does 9,000 damage per hit. Talk about crazy. Alright. And she also gives you 30,000 belly and 70 million XP when you kill her. So it's pretty worth it if you ask me. Alright, moving on, we got the Kilo Admiral, and this one is level 1750 and has a 5 to 10% chance of dropping the Lei accessory, which is a pretty decent accessory if you ask me. Spawns in every 30 minutes, has a total of 135,000 health and deals a whopping 1,100 damage per hit. And you get 78 million XP for killing her, along with 35,000 belly. She spawns inside the massive tree that's located at the third sea. Alright, next up we got the Captain Elephant boss, and this guy's located on the Floating Turtle. He's a level 1875 boss, and he drops you the twin hooks once you kill him. He spawns in every 30 minutes, and if you kill him you get a total of 90 million XP along with 40,000 belly. But he's pretty difficult to kill, and definitely one of the tougher bosses in the third sea. And next up we got the Beautiful Pirate, and this one's also located at the Floating Turtle. It's a level 1950 boss and has a chance of dropping the Cavender Sword. Once you kill him you get 50,000 belly along with 100 million XP, and that is amazing. Overall, this guy is also a pretty difficult boss, but nothing compared to the next one. Next up we got the Logma boss, and this is a level 2000 boss. And once you defeat him, you're going to receive the Celestial Swordsman title, along with the Tushida sword. And guess what? This boss is also located at the Floating Turtle, man. The Floating Turtle has so many bosses on it. And overall, this guy would be the strongest boss in the third sea, if not for what's next. Alright, next up, we got the boss that you've all been waiting for, the Cake Queen, the level 2175 boss, who spawns in every 30 minutes and drops the Buddy Sword. The Cake Queen is the most powerful boss in Blox Fruits to this day, but I'm sure Blox Fruits devs will add some new ones in that are way stronger than this one. She has a whopping 261,000 health points, and the damage she does is unknown, but I will guarantee you that it is a butt ton. She's located at the Huge Peanut in Ice Cream Land, and overall, a pretty solid boss. She's literally the strongest in the game. I'm gonna be telling you some super secret things about every single fighting style in Blox Fruits. Okay, so first up we got the combat fighting style, and this is a fighting style everybody gets when they join Blox Fruits. And obviously, since you get this by default, it literally costs nothing to buy. It has a total of 2 abilities. The first one is called Quick Tackle, which has a 1 mastery requirement, where the user dashes forward dealing a bunch of damage to the enemy. The second one is called Ground Smash, and this one has a 20 mastery requirement. And this is where the user smashes into the ground, dealing a bunch of AoE damage to players or NPCs around them. Good things about this fighting style is obviously that it's free and you get it as soon as you start the game, but the bad thing is that it's the literal worst fighting style in the whole game, and you should switch to a different one as soon as possible. Alright, moving on, the next fighting style is called Dark Step, and this is a leg-based fighting style, and it can be learned from the Dark Step teacher for the price of 150,000 belly. And the place you find him is in the pirate village on the first sea. The NPC can also be found on the lava side of the hot and cold island in the second sea, and at the castle on the sea at the third sea. This fighting style has a total of 4 different abilities. The first one is called Flying Kick, and this one has only a 1 mastery requirement. It's where the user launches themselves towards their cursor, leaving a decent impact. The next one is called Breakdance, and this is exactly what it sounds like, but instead of actually breakdancing, you're breakdancing while dealing a butt ton of damage to your enemies. The third ability is called Barrage, and what this ability does is just spam a bunch of clicks towards the direction you're looking at, and this one has an 80 mastery requirement. Next up, we got the final ability for this fighting style, Overheat. It has a 150 mastery requirement, and what it does is it basically overheats the user's legs, making them increase their damage by 1.5 1.22 for around 30 seconds. But don't worry, you can use the ability again once the cooldown ends. Good thing about this fighting style is all the attacks are AoE, and there's a butt ton of combos you can learn with this. Alright, the next fighting style is called Electric, and this is a fighting style that most players in the first sea should have equipped. It was added to the game in Update 2, and it costs a total of 500,000 belly, and you can buy it in the first sea from the Mad Scientist. You can also find the Mad Scientist in the hot area of the hot and cold island located in the second sea. Electric has a total of 3 different abilities. The first ability is called Stomp, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You just leap into the air and slam back into the ground with a butt ton of electrical force. This one has a 50 mastery requirement. Moving on to Electric Tackle, which has a 100 mastery requirement. What you do is you basically dash straight into your opponent or wherever you're aiming with your cursor, and you deal a butt ton of damage to your enemy. The next one is called Electrical Floor, and when this is used on a player NPC, it stops them from moving completely, stunning them in place and dealing a bunch of damage consistently. This one is also area of attack, which means it's really good for grinding. And this fighting style also has a butt ton of combos that you can learn, but you have to pair them with a bunch of other things. Overall, a really decent fighting style, and I definitely recommend this to first sea players. Alright, next up we got Water Kung Fu. This is a fighting style that can be bought from the Water Kung Fu teacher for a total of 750,000 belly, making it the best fighting style in the first sea. The place you find the Water Kung Fu teacher is behind a certain wall in the underwater city, located on the first sea. You can also find him on the hot side of the hot and cold island in the second sea and at the castle on the sea. This fighting style has a total of 3 different moves. The first one is called Steam Charged Fist, and this one you basically punch the air, dealing a bunch of damage to enemies in front of you. And this one has a 70 mastery requirement. The next ability, which is the X ability, is called Deadly Shower, and for this one you need 130 mastery requirement. For this one you just shoot a bunch of projectiles, similar to the Life Fruits X ability. Next up we got Heavy Water Punch, and this is the C ability of the fighting style. For this one you basically dash forward and punch an enemy if they're in your way, dealing a bunch of damage. But this one is not area effect, so I don't think it's worth the 250 mastery requirement. What Water Kung Fu is really good at is when you pair it with the Buddha Fruit, and it's overall one of the best fighting styles in the game to grind with, and definitely the best overall for the first sea. Alright, now moving on to fighting styles that are in the second sea. The first one is Dragon's Breath. This one you can buy from an NPC called Sabi for a total of 1,500 fragments in the Kingdom of Rose on the second sea. This fighting style has a total of 3 different abilities. The first one has a 100 mastery requirement, and it's called Dragon Rush, and this is where the user dashes forward twice, punching anything in their way. The X ability is called Dragon Flames, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. You just send a bunch of flames flying forward where your cursor is pointing. The last ability, which has a 300 mastery requirement, is called Dragon Explosion, and this is similar to one of the Bomb Fruits abilities. You just leap in the air and then you have a huge explosion, dealing a bunch of damage to everybody around you. Overall, a pretty decent fighting style, but I still think Water Kung Fu is better than this one, even though it's ranked a bit lower. Moving on to the next fighting style. This one is called Superhuman, and it's a fighting style that costs a total of 3 million belly, and it specializes in speed, stuns, and knockback. It's literally the upgraded version of every fighting style, and the way you get this is really difficult. The requirements for this is a 300 mastery on Dark Step, Electric, Water Kung Fu, and Dragon's Breath. And after getting the 300 mastery, you can go talk to the martial arts teacher, and there you can buy it from him. And this is widely regarded as one of the best fighting styles in the game for PvP. The first skill of this fighting style is called Beast Owl Pounce, and this one has a 110 mastery requirement. What this does is it launches yourself towards where your cursor is, and if there's a player there, it just locks them in place and pummels them a bunch of times. The X ability is called Thunderclap, and for this one, you just release a shockwave from your body, dealing a bunch of damage to everything around you. Next up, we got the C ability for this one. It's called Conqueror's Gun, and it has a 330 mastery requirement. For this one, you dash to wherever your cursor is, and you deal a bunch of damage, knocking the player back if they're standing in your way. Overall, really good thing about this fighting style is that it has extremely high combat potential, and one of the best fighting styles in the game, but there is one that's a lot better and a lot harder to get, and it makes this fighting style look like a joke. Alright, next up is the Death Step fighting style, and this fighting style is the upgraded version of the Dark Step. It was added in Update 13, and it can be learned from an NPC called Fiona the Reformed. Once you defeat the Ice Admiral at the second sea, you have a 10% drop chance of getting a key that opens a library to where Fiona the Reformed is. And once you get there, you can buy it for a total of 5,000 fragments and 2.5 million belly. But trust me guys, it's definitely worth it. This fighting style, like its counterpart Dark Step, also has a total of 4 abilities. The first one is called Rocket Kick, and this one is really self-explanatory. You just launch yourself towards someone and kick them super hard. The next one is called Wind Bullet, and for this one, it's actually a long-range attack. So wherever your cursor is pointing, once you click the attack button, then you send a projectile flying towards it, dealing a bunch of damage. The next one is called Vermilion Drill, and what this does is you jump above your enemy, locking them, not letting them move, and kicking them a butt ton of times. Next up, we got Maximum Overheat, which is really similar to the normal ability of the original Dark Step, but this one is a lot better because it lasts for a total of 40 seconds and increases the Death Step's damage by 10%. But it does have a 60-second cooldown, so be careful while using it. This fighting style has the second highest damage out of every fighting style in the game, making it really good for PvP, especially for farming CBs. It has decent area of damage, but there's still some that are better. Bad thing about this overall is that the V move has the highest mastery requirement in the game. You literally need 400 mastery to be able to use it, so you're gonna have to grind a butt ton for this. But there are also a lot of combos, so if you want to maximize your potential with this fighting style, just make sure you learn a bunch of them. Next up, we got my favorite fighting style, Sharkman Karate. This is the upgraded version of Water Kung Fu, and it's considered to be one of the best fighting styles in the game because of its grinding potential. The way you get this is by talking to the NPC called Dyrock the Sharkman, and he will let you buy this unique fighting style in exchange for the Water Key. The Water Key is dropped by the Tidekeeper with a 15% chance of dropping, and this boss is pretty tough, so it's gonna take you a bunch of tries to get the key. But even after you get the key, you need to pay Dyrock a total of 2.5 million belly along with 5,000 fragments, exactly the same as Death Step. And when you combine this fighting style with the Butterfruit, it's literally unstoppable in grinding, and doing that trick is the best way to grind in the game. This fighting style has a total of 3 abilities. The first one is called 12 Water Palms, and for this one you just send yourself flying forward, dealing a bunch of damage to anything in your way. The X ability is called Pressure Vortex, and this one has a 200 mastery requirement, and for this one you just shoot a projectile towards your enemy, dealing a bunch of damage and sending them flying back. Next up is the C ability, and this one has a 300 mastery requirement. For this one, you pull your enemies towards you and then you send them flying backwards. The good thing about this ability is that it's the best grinding fighting style in the whole game. It also has a high combo potential, but there's still some that are a bit better. It has great range and it's really easy to hit. Overall, a really good fighting style. In my opinion, one of the best in the game. Next up, we got another heavy hitter, and this one is called the Electric Claw, and it's the upgraded version of the electric fighting style from the first C. And the way you get Electric Claw is first you gotta get 400 mastery on the electric fighting style, and then you gotta find the previous hero NPCs located close to the Logma boss at the floating turtle in the 3rd C. Then all you gotta do is talk to him and do a quest that requires you to get to the mansion in under 30 seconds. You can kind of cheese this one if you have the Portal Fruit or the Light Fruit. And once you pay him 3 million belly and 5,000 fragments, you can equip the fighting style from him anytime you want. Electric Claw has a total of 3 different abilities. The first one is called Electrical Rampage. For this one, it locks the user in place, hits them with the claws a bunch of time, and dashes into them, dealing a bunch of damage. This one has a 110 mastery requirement. Next one is called Lightning Trust. This one has a 220 mastery requirement. For this one, you just charge your enemy, and then there's a huge electrical explosion, dealing a bunch of damage to your enemy. Next ability is called Thunderclap and Flash, and this one has a 330 mastery requirement. For this one, you just dash around the place a bunch of times and then finally into your enemy, pummeling them into the ground and dealing a bunch of damage. And the really good thing about this ability is that all of its skills can be used for movements, even its M1 ability, and it has a really high damage perk. Like, I'm pretty sure this is the second most powerful fighting style in the game. Bad thing though is it's pretty difficult to obtain because you need a 400 mastery on the electric fighting style, and then you also got to pay a bunch of money. But overall, a really good fighting style, and this might be the second best fighting style in the game. Just wait till you see what's first. Alright, next up we got the Dragon Talon fighting style. This fighting style was added in update 16, and the way you get it is by talking to the Uzalt NPC. And obviously it's the upgraded version of Dragon's Breath. The way you get it is by obtaining the Fiery Essence from the random surprise, which you can buy from the Death King at the Haunted Castle by trading in 50 bones. And once you give him the Fire Essence, you can learn Dragon Talon at any time. But the requirements for this are a 400 mastery on Dragon's Breath, and you also gotta have 3 million belly spare along with 5,000 fragments. This fighting style has a total of 3 different abilities. The first one is called Talon Lighter, and for this one you dash straight into your enemy, pummeling them a bunch of time, and there's literally even blue flames, making it look really cool. The X ability is called Ember Annihilator, and for this one you send a huge fiery projectile flying towards your enemy, launching them back and dealing a bunch of damage. The C ability is called Inferno Vertex, and for this one you just create a huge fiery inferno, dealing a buttload of damage to everything around you. Probably the best ability from this fighting style in my opinion. Good thing thing about this fighting style overall is that all of its skills do an area of damage, making it really good for grinding. But the bad thing is that it's pretty hard to obtain because you have to meet all the requirements. Overall, a pretty decent fighting style, but nothing in comparison to what's next. Alright, now we got the fighting style you've all been waiting for, the literal best fighting style in the whole of Blox Fruits. God Human. God Human is the upgraded version of the superhuman fighting style, and literally the strongest fighting style in the whole game because it deals the most damage out of all of them. But wait till you hear the requirements for this one. You gotta have a 400 mastery on superhuman, death step, sharkman karate, electric claw, and dragon talon. On top of that, you gotta have 5 million belly spare along with 5,000 fragments, making it the hardest to get fighting style in the whole of Blox Fruits. And you also need these materials. You need 20 fish tails, 20 magma ore, 10 dragon scales, and 10 mystic droplets. But trust me, it's definitely worth it because it's really overpowered. So it has a total of 3 abilities. The first one is called Soaring Beast, and for this one you launch yourself forward towards any player next to you and you just lock them in place and you just pummel them a bunch of times. The next ability is called Heaven and Earth, and this ability actually has 2 different versions. For the first one, if you just click it, it just shoots a projectile towards where your cursor is located, and if you hold the button, then you start dealing a bunch of damage to everything around you. The last ability is called Sixth Realm Gun, and this also has 2 versions. If you just click the button, then you just dash forward to where your cursor is, pummeling any enemy in your way. And the second version of this is if you hold it, you charge up and you dash towards where your cursor is and you deal way more damage than the initial click. And this ability, in my opinion, is one of the most overpowered from this style. Overall, God Human is the strongest fighting style in the game, but you probably won't be getting it anytime soon. I'm gonna be telling you some secrets about every race in Blox Fruits, and some pretty cool tricks that you definitely did not know. Okay, so first up we got the human race, and the human race is one out of the 4 races in the game that players can spawn in as, but you're mostly going to spawn in as this race because it has a 50% chance of happening. The human race is one of the most popular races, and when people join the game they don't even notice that they're human because you literally have no physical features. And the way you can get the human race if you don't have it is by buying a race reroll from the Trot NPC for 3,000 fragments, but you can only do that once you get into the second sea. You can also buy a race reroll from the shop for 90 Robux. I don't recommend this one personally, or you can buy it from special events. But let's talk a bit more about the race itself. So the basic human race version 1 actually gives you no buffs, so you get no advantages by spawning in as this race. But there is a way to upgrade it, obviously, just like every race in the game. So the way you upgrade the human race to V2 is by completing the Alchemist quest. To take this quest, you would have to have completed the Colosseum quest before it. And once you unlock the V2 version of the human race, you actually get 4 different buffs. You get an increase in movement speed, your flash step range gets doubled, and the cooldown is lowered. It goes from around 15 seconds to 10 seconds, which is really good. And you also get an extra dodge and faster dodge regeneration time on your observation hotkey. And you also have a slightly longer dash distance. But there are no visual changes, like I mentioned before. Moving on to the version 3 of this race, and for this one you gotta complete Aeries quest. And to get the V3, it's actually slightly different from all the other races. To complete this quest, you have to kill the Diamond boss, the Jeremy boss, and Vegeta. And make sure you grab the quest every time you join the game because it will reset if you don't. But the buffs you get from the V3 is an ability called Last Resort, and while you activate the Last Resort ability, the user deals more damage depending on how low their health is during the ability, which means if you're on lower health you deal way more damage to your opponents, which in my opinion is really overpowered. But it does have a 20-second cooldown and it lasts for 5 seconds. Moving on to the V4 of the human race. To get the V4, it's similar to all the other V4s. You have to complete the Temple of Time puzzle, and then you have to do the Trial of Strength, and then a bunch of other boring stuff. And finally, once you unlock it, you just get a butt ton of abilities, because it's the race V4. When you transform into race V4, you receive max stats as well as increased damage, speed, and heal by 10%. You get an ability called Psycho, which gives your flash step 3 charges, which temporarily makes you invisible and faster when you use it. And the charges can be seen at the bottom of your screen when you transform. And the flash steps also regenerate faster, your dash distance increases, and your moves don't get cancelled when you take damage, which is really useful when you're fighting people. The next ability you get is called Limit Break. You basically get a rage meter, and it allows you to get much stronger using it. And in the upgraded version, your rage meter actually lasts longer and it's uncapped to 150%. And this is where you get the first visual change for the human race, and it looks amazing. You literally turn into a zombie looking creature with a bunch of red aura around you, and it looks really dope. One of the coolest looking races in the game in my opinion. Alright, moving on, the next race we got here is the shark race, and this is also one of the 4 races in the game that you can spawn in as. But for this one, you only have have a 12.5% chance, so not a lot of people will be getting this. And the way you can get this race otherwise is the same as the human race. You can reroll from Trot for 3,000 fragments or reroll the race in the shop. And this is the same for most of the other races in the game. So unlike the human race, you'll actually instantly know if you are a shark. In the version 1, you actually have a fin on your back. I guess that's what symbolizes you're a shark. And the V1 actually gives you some buffs. You take less damage in water and it increases your swim speed because I guess you're a shark. But moving on to the V2. To get the V2, it's the same as every other V2 in the game. You gotta complete the Alchemist quest. And you also need the Colosseum quest to do it. And the buffs you get for the V2 is it increases your player speed while moving in the water and completely removing any damage taken from the water, even if you have a Blox Fruit equipped in. So you can literally just be swimming around in the sea with a leopard fruit. Pretty crazy. But it doesn't have any visual changes. Moving on to the V3. For this one, you gotta complete the Arrowies quest, and this varies depending on your race. And for the Shark V3, you gotta defeat a naturally spawned in sea beast. Not the sea beast player spawn in, you just gotta drive out in the sea with a boat and hope one spawns in. And for the V3, you actually get an ability called Water Body. And when this ability is activated, the damage you take from players and NPCs is reduced by 80%, so you basically take almost no damage. This ability lasts for 6.5 seconds and has a cooldown of 30 seconds. And you actually also got some visual changes for this one. Along with the fin that's already on your back, you get 2 other fins on both your arms, making you look really cool if your avatar fits it. Next up is the V4 for the Shark race. And for this one, it's the same as every other V4. You gotta complete the Temple of Time and do the Trial of Water, along with a bunch of other stuff. And this is a buff that every race gets in their V4. When you transform, you receive max stats as well as increased damage speed, and you heal by 10%. But with the Shark race, you get an ability called Leviathan's Armor. For this one, you gain a water shield which regenerates by dealing damage, and that is really epic, especially if you can dish out a high amount of damage. In the upgraded version, your shield's capacity is increased. Next up, we got the Whirlpool, and for this one, you apply a water debuff to your enemies, slowing their speed, and the effect stacks, so you can use it on them multiple times. In the upgraded version, the effect lasts longer. And for the visual changes, this one's actually really cool as well. Your tail gets bigger, and when you transform, you create a huge blue aura around you, and you look really badass. This is also one of my favorite transformations. Overall, the Shark race is a really solid race, but not as good as some of the other ones on this list. Moving on, the next race on this list is the Angel race, and this is also one of the 4 races players can spawn in as. And for this one, you also got a 12.5% chance, same as the Shark race. And if you want to get it in other ways, it's the same as the other races. For the V1 of this race, you actually have 2 small wings on your back, and your player's jump height will slightly increase, and you'll also be able to use the air jump ability, even if you haven't bought it. And the small wings also look pretty cool. For getting the V2, it's the same as the other races. You gotta get the Alchemist quest done, and there are no visual changes for the V2, but you do get some extra small abilities. And the first ability is that your first air jump will actually go slightly higher than the other jumps, and the energy you consume while air jumping is reduced by 20%, and this is really helpful, especially if you're a new player. And you also gain an additional air jump, pretty fitting for the Angel race. Moving on to the next one, the V3. For this one, you also got to do Arrowies quest, and for this quest, it's actually pretty special for the Angel race. You have to kill another player with the Angel race. But if you got a friend that has the race, you can ask them if you can kill them, and then you can get this quest done really quickly. So for the V3, the buffs are actually pretty cool. First up, the physical changes that the wings are bigger and they flap around a bit. And the user unlocks an ability called Heavenly Blood, and when activated, it increases defense by 15%, and it heals around 20% of the player's maximum health, as well as around 10% of their maximum energy, along with their natural regeneration. So this ability actually stacks, and it lasts for 6.5 seconds and has a cooldown of 20 seconds. Overall, I'm not sure what I think about this ability. I do think it's on the weaker side compared to the other V3 abilities, but let me know down in the comments. Moving on to the V4, you got to complete the Temple of Time puzzle and do the Trial of the King. And once you do that, you get the ancient powers just like every other V4. You get an ability called Prince of the Skies, and this ability allows the user to glide in the air by holding the dash button and free flight by holding the jump button, and this ability is really cool. In the upgraded version, all the effects are increased greatly. Next ability is called King's Rule, and for this one, it adds an aura around the user with multiple effects: slowness, damage, energy drain, and screen distortion. So if anyone walks next to you, they're going to take a bunch of damage. And in the upgraded version, the effects are increased. And the visual transformation for this race is honestly one of my favorites, because you literally spawn in 4 wings and you have this amazing yellow glow around you, and it looks really cool. Next up, we got the rabbit race, and this is also one of the 4 races you can get by joining the game, with the same chances as the shark and angel, a 12.5 chance. And if you don't have it, the way you can get it is the same as the other races. So we actually got a physical change for this race as well. In the V1, you get 2 pretty cool bunny ears on your head, and also increases the movement speed by 1.5, which is pretty good for new players. And for the V2, it's the same as the other ones. You got to complete the alchemist quest, and you get no visual changes for the V2, but your speed and dashing is increased. Increases the player movement speed to double their normal speed, and this is really good, especially because it stacks with other abilities and stuff. It also increases the player's dash length slightly, and it also decreases the energy cost for dashing, and that's going to be really useful. Moving on to the V3. For this one, it's the same quest giver as the other races, but for this one, you got to collect 30 chests. But this one is one of the easiest race quests because you don't actually need to go around killing things. You just got to server hop a bunch of chests. And you actually get a visual change for this as well. You get a nice rabbit tail, and you unlock an ability called agility. And when you activate this, your player's movement speed goes to 4 times your normal speed, making you like the Flash. It also increases your dash length slightly and decreases the cooldown for dashing. It lasts for 6.5 seconds and has a cooldown of 30 seconds. You can use this to either run away or run 2 fights. A really useful ability. And for the V4, you gotta complete the Temple of Time puzzle by doing the Trial of Speed. Pretty fitting name if you ask me. And when you go into the V4, you unlock the ancient powers like the other races, and you unlock an ability called Whirlwind. And for this one, you leave a tornado while dashing. So if you just spam your dashes, you just spawn in a bunch of tornadoes. And what the tornadoes do is that they trap enemies temporarily. They actually don't do damage. In the upgraded version, the tornadoes become way stronger. Next ability is called Lightning Cloak. And for this one, your dashes become much longer due to the electricity from the dash. And also has really cool effects. And in the upgraded version, it allows you to super dash by holding down the dash button. And the super dash looks really sick. And for the transformation, this one is also really cool. You have a huge green aura that spawns in around you. Your tail gets way bigger and your hair starts glowing with electricity. I mean, you're literally like the Flash at this point. Okay, so next up we got the Cyborg race, and this race is not actually a race you can spawn in as. You get this race by doing the Cyborg puzzle. If you want the specifics on the quest for the Cyborg, you can search it up in the wiki. It was added in update 14, and once you completed the Cyborg quest, you got the version 1 of the ability. It gave you absolutely no buffs like the human race, but you did get a metallic mask on the upper left part of your head, and it looks pretty cool. Moving on to get the V2 for this, is just like the other races. You gotta go talk to the alchemist, and once you get V2, you get a 10% defense against melee, sword, and gun attacks, and 15% of the damage you receive literally converts into energy, and that's really sick and fitting of a cyborg. Next up for V3, you gotta do the Ares quest, and for the cyborg, what you have to do is give him a physical Blox Fruit, and this one is probably the easiest because I know all of you watching got some useless fruits in your inventory. And once you do the V3, you get an ability called Energy Core, and this one has a bunch of buffs. So it boosts the player's defense by 30%, and it also creates an area of damage lightning effect around the player that does tick damage to enemies within their range. And the damage you do from this ability is actually based on the player's level. The damage starts at 0 and scales up by 0.65% every 10 levels. So someone that's level 2000 will deal around 130 damage per tick. But if you're level 1750, then you'll deal 113.75 damage per tick. I don't want to go into the specifics because it's pretty complicated. Just know it's a pretty cool ability that lasts for 6.5 seconds and has a 30-second cooldown. Moving on to the race V4 for the cyborg. The way you get it is by doing the Temple of Time puzzle and doing the Trial of the Machine. And trust me, you turn into a machine after this quest. So we got the ancient powers that every race gets, then we got energy control. And for this one, any damage that's dealt now chains nearby enemies through orbs, and it allows you to super jump. But you gotta have observation hockey enabled. And for the upgraded version, the effects of the chain damage increases and the super jump deals damage and doesn't require observation to be enabled. Next ability is called Aftershock, and for this one, you apply an electrifying effect that disables your opponent's observation ability, so they literally won't be able to dodge your shots. And in the upgraded version, the electrifying effect becomes stronger. And the visual changes for this are one of my favorites. You actually get a bunch of metallic looking wings behind you, and when you fully transform, you get this amazing pink glow around you, and it looks really badass. Next up, we got the Ghoul race, and this is also a race that cannot be obtained by spawning in. And the way you get it is that you need to be at least level 1000, and you need 100 ectoplasm, which is dropped by NPCs that spawn at the curse ship. You also need a Hellfire Torch, which has a 1 to 2% chance of being spawned in by the cursed captain, who spawns in every night with a 1 out of 3 chance, so it's gonna be really difficult to get this race. Then you gotta go talk to the Extremic NPC, and he gives you the race. The V1 for this race is actually pretty cool. You get a slightly increased regeneration and you run 30% faster during the night. Pretty ghoul-like. And for a visual change, you get a pair of 2 black horns on your head. To get the V2, it's the same as the other races. You gotta go talk to the alchemist, and once you do that, your life leech gets enabled. You get no visual changes, but every time you hit a player using a fighting style, you heal by 25%, making it really good for Buddha users. But the first life leech ability is for the players. You actually get a second one for NPCs, but this time you only heal by 5%, which is still really decent for Buddha users because you practically take no damage when you're grinding with that fruit. And for the V3, you gotta do Ares quest, and for Ghoul, you have to kill 5 players. And it needs to be completed in a public server, but you can just get your friend to join your game and let you kill him. Pretty easy quest if you think of it like that. And for the version 3, you actually get a physical change where your horns just look way cooler. They get much bigger and pop out of your head a bit more. And you unlock an ability called Heightened Senses. When it's activated, you can use skills that are still on a 40% cooldown, and that is really overpowered. You can basically spam all your abilities. It buffs the player's overall damage by 10%, speed by 10%, and defense by 15%. And this one lasts for 8 seconds and has a cooldown of 25 seconds, making it the fastest usable V3 ability out of every race. Moving on to the V4, you gotta do the Temple of Time puzzle and do the Trial of Carnage. Pretty fitting to the name. You get the ancient powers like every other V4, and you get an ability called Blood Siphon. And for this one, every attack you send out gains life leech, which means you heal a bunch of health every time you do damage. And in the upgraded version, the effects of it is increased greatly. Next ability is called Domain Expansion. I wonder where they got this from. It adds a huge dark field around the user that removes people's health, regeneration, and applies blindness on your enemies. And all your nighttime passive abilities become available during the day. Really overpowered. In the upgraded version, when you dash, a bunch of crows will start attacking your enemies. Pretty random if you ask me. And it also increases your field of range. And for the transformation itself, it's really cool and very ghoul-like. You start transforming with a huge black aura and with a bunch of red lighting. And it looks really badass, but I still like some of the other transformations better. This is how you equip 2 fighting styles at the same time. And this is how you send yourself flying across the map. These are a bunch of Blox Fruits facts that you must know. Okay, so this first trick is something that's super overpowered if you know how to use it properly, and I'm talking about having 8 people in a raid. And you might be wondering, how the heck is that possible? Because everyone knows that in Blox Fruits you can only have a max of 4 people per raid, but there's actually a trick to have 8. And for this, you're gonna need 4 people that have the love fruit. And once you have the love fruit, you have to equip the flamingo ride ability. And once you do that, you can actually get people to ride on your flamingo and then start the raid while standing on the pad. And if all 4 players do this, there will be 8 people that are teleported to the raid area, making it really overpowered, because the raids will be really easy to complete with 8 people. And I don't think that Blox Fruits devs intended for there to be 8 people to do the raid in the first place. Overall, a really overpowered trick because it makes your fruit awakening life and grinding fragment life much easier. Okay, for this next one, it's just a pretty interesting fact about the bomb fruit. Everyone knows that the bomb fruit is probably one of the worst fruits in Blox Fruits. There's actually a cool thing about its final self-destruct ability that you should know about. And the thing about this ability is that the longer you hold down the key for the ability, the more it charges up and the bigger the explosion at the end. And if you charge it up completely, it actually does the highest knockback out of anything in the whole of Blox Fruits. And if you team up with a friend, you can use it to launch yourself off to really high places that you're not supposed to be able to get to. Overall, just a pretty interesting fact, and I doubt you're going to be using it that much. Okay, so everybody knows about the barrier fruit in Blox Fruits, but did you know that one of its abilities is actually really overpowered if you know how to use it properly? I'm talking about the C ability, Barrier Prison. This ability has a 90 mastery requirement, and basically what it does is you shoot out a huge barrier ball from your body, and if you manage to trap a player in it, you can control and move them exactly where you want them to go. And if you're fighting a player next to water and you use this ability on them, you can use it to shoot them super far into the water, and then once the ability dismisses, they're just gonna fall in water and they're just gonna die to it. Well, unless they don't have a devil fruit, but I doubt that's gonna be the case because 99% of players in the game have a Blox Fruit equipped. Overall, just a pretty interesting PvP trick, and it's really rare that you're going to be using this. Every Blox Fruit players love chests. It's a really easy way to get your hands on some quick cash. But there's actually a secret location that a bunch of chests spawn at that not many players know about. And this location is on the second sea in the first area. All you have to do is walk over to this bridge over here, and then you'll notice that the wall here is actually shaped a bit differently. And all you have to do is use a breaking ability, or you can just flash step inside. And once you get inside, you're going to notice 3 golden chests. And it's also a pretty decent hiding spot if you're trying to get away from some bounty hunters. But then again, if they have observation hockey activated, then they can see you go inside the place and just follow you inside. So overall, just a pretty good place to get some chests. Everybody knows about the movement ability with the awakened dough fruit. It's the roller donut. But did you know that transporting you is not the only ability that this donut has? I didn't know this at first, but the donut can actually do damage and drag players along with you if you do it correctly. So all you have to do is just to run over an NPC or a player, and as long as you're angling the donut properly and the the player is moving in a specific direction, you should be able to drag them along with you. You just kind of take them for a ride. But it takes a lot of skill to do it for a long amount of time because most of the time they just fall off after like 1 or 2 seconds. Overall, just a pretty funny ability that you can use to troll your friends, or if you're just kind of bored, you can go try it around with NPCs. Alright, moving on, I'm going to be showing you how to get a boat on land. Well, you can't actually move the boat around too much on land, so it's a pretty useless trick. But anyways, let's get into it. There's actually 2 different ways to do this. The first method is using the Fishman Island teleporter. And this one is the easiest one by far. All you gotta do is equip your boat of choice, and then you just have to drive it into the teleporter. And then the boat will teleport with you, and it'll just start glitching around on land. And if you try and walk into it at the right angle, it'll actually launch you back super far away. And the second way to do it is by using the control fruit. All you have to do is make the normal dome with the control fruit, then you gotta levitate the boat and drag it over to the land. And with this method, you can actually choose where you put the boat instead of the previous one where you have to use it at Fishman Island. So if you have the control fruit, you can pretty much do it anywhere. But overall, this is a pretty useless trick because I don't think anyone's trying to ride a boat on land. So everybody knows about the chopped fruit in Blox Fruits. It's regarded as one of the worst fruits by the whole community. It's a fruit that costs a total of 30,000 belly or 100 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. But overall, this might look like a pretty bad fruit, but did you know that it actually has a secret passive ability that a lot of you might not know about? And that passive ability is not being able to take damage from any sword attack. And this doesn't just include the passive M1 ability from swords, it includes all of their skills. Like imagine the X ability of the Dark Blade not doing any damage to you just because you have the chop fruit equipped. But overall, this is really situational, and most people only use it if they know they're PvPing against a sword main, or you can use it to grind against sword enemies, because no matter how high their level is, they won't be able to do damage to you. Okay, so this next trick is gonna come in handy a lot and just help you in general with your Blox Fruits journey, and it's being able to equip any fruit at any time. And obviously for this trick, you obviously have to have the fruit bought permanently from the Blox Fruit dealer. Once you do this, you actually don't need to go back to the Blox Fruit dealer to equip that fruit permanently. You can simply just click on your settings, open up your shop, click this button right here, and then you can equip any permanent fruit that you have. You can literally change it out anytime. Imagine you're just in a situation where you're about to fall into lava, and then the last second you change into the magma fruit so you don't take any damage from this. I mean, I doubt that's ever happening to anybody, but just in case it does happen, you know what to do. And overall, it's just a really useful thing that just makes your life 10 times easier. Okay, so for this next fact I bet you did not know is there's a way to equip 2 fighting styles at the same time in Blox Fruits. The way you do it is you either have to have the Dark Step or Death Step fighting style, and you have to have the final ability unlocked. But I recommend getting the Dark Step fighting style because it's a lot easier to level it up. Once you do that, you unlock the transformation ability Overheat. You're gonna notice that your legs set on fire. What this ability does is all the damage you do with that fighting style increases by a good amount. And then once you do this, you're actually gonna talk to an ability teacher for a different fighting style, the Sharkman fighting style or the Electric fighting style. And then all you gotta do is equip their fighting style, and boom, you have 2 fighting styles at the same time. But I'm not actually sure if the buffs from the Dark Step stack onto the Electric fighting style. That's something you guys have to test out for yourselves. Okay, so everybody knows about the Phoenix fruit in Blox Fruits, and everyone also knows about its X ability, Regeneration Flame. This ability requires the 90 mastery, and it heals you like crazy, but it does use up a lot of energy. Another thing is, while it's healing you, it spawns this huge aura around you, but there's a way to actually glitch this aura and make it stay permanently. So all you have to do is simply use this ability and walk onto a boat, and once you get out of the boat, you're gonna notice that the ability stays, and you can actually do this multiple times, and you'll create this huge lag ball around you. And if you do it enough times, you actually won't even be able to see your character. But just don't do it way too much because it's gonna lag the crap out of the server and your computer, and you might end up crashing the server. So do this one at your own risk. Okay, so next up we got another fruit fact, and this is something that's super cool and I did not know existed. It's a trick to do with the bomb fruit. Everybody knows about the bomb fruit, and it's the ability called landmines. As long as you hold the key down, it'll create a huge range around you where a bunch of landmines spawns in, and if someone steps over it, they take a butt ton of damage. But did you know there's actually a way to place these landmines in the water and not just on land? What you do is you just walk over to the closest ledge next to water that you can find, and then you just hold down and use the landmines ability like normal, and then boom, half your mines will be placed on the water instead of on land. And you could catch people that are swimming out in the middle of the water, but I don't think people will be doing that. Overall, just a pretty fun ability to use, and it's something to use if you're fighting against people without a fruits, because they're the only people that are going to be in the water. Okay, so next up I got another fruit fact, and this one's about the falcon fruit. Everyone knows that the falcon fruit is one of the few beast type fruits in the game, and once you use the transformation ability for the falcon fruit, this is actually a secret that not a lot of people know. It's the fact that you jump slightly higher, which lets you get to places that you're normally not supposed to be able to jump to. Overall, just a really minor fact, and I don't think it's worth buying this garbage fruit just to jump jump a bit higher. But it's just a fun ability that you can explore around with. Okay, so next up, I got a hidden location for you first sea players out there. And this is a place that's pretty difficult to find. So on the first sea, when you head over to Marine Fortress, there's actually a secret location inside of this tower. All you have to do is climb up it, and then you can actually climb down into the tower. And once you do that, you're going to be looking at an NPC named Paulus. And what this NPC does, he sells you a black cape for 50,000 belly, but you have to be at least level 50 to buy it. And that shouldn't be a problem if you're in the second sea or above. And even most first sea players are above level 50. And overall, it's just a pretty decent accessory for first sea players, but keep in mind, only for first sea players. So later on, once you get better accessories, you should probably stick to using those. Alright, now I'm going to be telling you a fact about cyborgs in Blox Fruits. Did you know that there's actually 4 different things in Blox Fruits to do with the cyborg? The first one is the cyborg race, and everybody knows and loves this race. It's one of the best races for grinding in the game. And the way you get this race is by completing the cyborg puzzle. And that takes me on to the second cyborg, the cyborg puzzle itself. And for this one, you gotta find the Fist of Darkness and just do a bunch of other tiring stuff, which lets you unlock the cyborg race. Now moving on to the third cyborg in Blox Fruits. This one is the cyborg boss NPC that can be found in the first sea, and is the second last boss of the first sea. The cyborg is a level 675 boss, and it can be found at the workshop house. He also has a 2.5% chance of dropping you the cool shades, and he spawns in every 30 minutes, just like every other boss. He has a total of 43,000 HP and does around 600 to 700 damage per hit. Overall, just a really tiring boss for every first sea players. Then the fourth and final cyborg is the malicious cyborg NPC, and this is an NPC that can be found at this area behind the factory on the second sea, and he'll sell you a flower ship for a total of 1,500 fragments. Some of you might be wondering what the flower ship is, and it's just a pretty decent boat, but if you have the faster boats game pass, then you won't really be needing this one. Okay, so first up on the list, we got an accessory called the Black Cape. This is a rare accessory and can be bought from an NPC called Paulus, who's located at a marine fortress in the first sea. This accessory costs a total of 50,000 belly, and the level requirement to purchase it is 50. And what this cape gives you is a plus 100 energy, plus 100 health, and plus 5% damage. Overall, a kinda decent accessory if you are a beginner, but you should probably switch to a different accessory as soon as possible, because this is the first accessory in the whole game. So next on the list, we got the Swordsman Hat. The Swordsman Hat is a rare accessory and it can be bought from an NPC called Hassan, who's located at the desert in the first sea. It costs a total of 150,000 belly, and you need to have at least 300 stat points in your sword to buy it, along with the flash step ability, air jump, and aura, which all you can buy from the ability teacher on the snow island. It gives you a simple plus 10% sword damage, and for first sea users, this is gonna come in handy a butt ton. It's more of a beginner accessory that you want to buy only in the first sea if you're a sword main to start off with. If you are a fruit main, then there's not really a point in buying this. Overall, a kinda decent accessory, but you want to move on to the next one as soon as possible. Next up on the list, we got the pink coat accessory. What this accessory gives you is plus 200 health, plus 10% gun damage, and has a 5 to 10% chance of being dropped from the boss after you kill him. The Dawn Swan boss spawns every 30 minutes in the large building in the middle of the prison, so if you want to grind him, you know where he's at now. Overall, this accessory is pretty good for gun mains, and it has pretty decent health boost for the first sea. Next on the list, we got an accessory called the Tomo Ring. It can be bought from an NPC called Yoshi, who's located at the second island of Skylands, and this place is where the Sky Warriors spawn. Costs a total of 500,000 belly, and it requires the user to have at least 200 melee stats before you're able to purchase it. So what this accessory does is it buffs your Blox Fruit damage by a whole 10%. And if you start off with a really good Blox Fruit, then this accessory is going to come in real handy. Next up on the list, we got the Coat accessory. This is a rare accessory and can be obtained with a 10% chance after defeating the Vice Admiral boss, who's located at Marine Fortress in the Big Tower. So what this coat gives you is plus 200 energy and plus 10% melee damage. And the pretty cool thing about this coat is it actually changes depending on whether you're a pirate or a marine. If you're a pirate, then you get a huge Whitebeard skull, and if you are a marine, you get a huge marine logo on the back of the coat. And this accessory is really good for low level players, but I don't really recommend grinding it because it only has a 10% drop chance. And another thing that's actually not known about this coat is it actually grants the user 50% more height when using the air jump ability, and this can come in real handy when you're trying to get to higher places. Overall, a really solid accessory for the first sea. Next on the list, we got the Cool Shades accessory. This is a rare accessory and can be obtained with a 1 to 2% chance after defeating the cyborg boss, who's located at the Fountain City in the first sea. And this accessory, in my opinion, is one of the most badass looking accessories in the game, and its stats definitely complement it. It gives you plus 100 energy, plus 100 health, plus 7.5% overall damage, and plus 17.5% overall movement speed buff. And it looks super badass. I mean, they're literally sunglasses. Who doesn't like sunglasses? And the good thing about this accessory is that it's really good and goes well with any build. build. So you can be a sword main, gun main, or a fruit main. And it works well because it buffs your overall damage, not just from one category. But the cons are that it has low health and energy boost, and it's kind of difficult to obtain. But for getting it in the first sea, honestly, I'm not complaining. Next up on the list, we got Usopp's hat. Usopp's hat is a rare accessory, and you can get it by defeating 3 players who are a similar level to you. But you have to be a pirate that has at least over 250,000 bounty. And that's kind of hard to get if you're in the first sea. And what this hat gives you is a plus 7.5% damage when you're using guns, and a 15% attack cooldown reduction for all guns, which means you can use all of your gun abilities 15% faster. But keep in mind, it's only good for low level gun users and good for newer players who don't have a lot of accessories. Bad thing about this hat, it's not really suited towards Blox Fruits or swords, and it's kind of a really bad accessory if you're a more experienced player with more accessories to choose from. So wear this one at your own risk. Next up, we got the Marine Cap accessory. This is a rare accessory, and you can obtain it by killing a pirate as a Marine when your honor is over 250,000. And this is really similar to the Usopp's Cap accessory. It gives you plus 7.5% sword and gun damage and 10% cooldown reduction for guns and swords. So it's basically a better version of the old accessory. And it's really easy to get because most players in the game actually choose pirates. So if you choose a marine, then you can find a butt ton of players to kill. And it's good for sword and gun users who are in the first sea. So moving on, we got the black spiky coat accessory. This is a rare accessory and it can be obtained with a 10% chance after defeating the Jeremy boss, who's located at the Kingdom of Rose in the second sea. This coat gives you plus 200 energy, plus 200 health, and plus 7.5% overall damage. And a good thing about this is it's basically compatible with any build, so it doesn't matter what you main in the game. But the bad thing about it is its drop chance, and everyone knows bosses take a really long time to spawn in, so this one's going to be really hard to grind if you want to get it. Next on the list, we got the Chopper Hat. The Chopper Hat is a rare accessory and it can be obtained with a 20% chance after defeating a Sea Beast. A Sea Beast is a boss that has a chance to spawn while traveling in a boat in the water in the second sea or above. And you'll definitely recognize it as soon as it spawns in. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's literally a Sea Beast. And the effects from this accessory are plus 3% Blox Fruit damage, 15% Blox Fruit attack cooldown reduction, and a 10% defense against any Blox Fruits attacks. And most people in the game are actually fruit mains, so this accessory is going to help you out a butt ton in the second sea. But a bad thing is that it's not really compatible for sword or gun mains, and on top of that, it does not increase your health, energy, or movement speed. So overall, a pretty average accessory for the second sea. Next up, we got the Top Hat, and this is really similar to the Chopper Hat from before. This is a rare accessory and it can be obtained with a 20% chance after defeating a Sea Beast. And you all know what Sea Beasts are from the previous one. This hat gives you a plus 3% melee damage and gives you a 10% attack cooldown reduction for all your abilities. I mean, that's pretty useful. And it gives you plus 10% defense against sword attacks. Overall, a pretty solid accessory. Moving on, we got the Warrior Helmet, yet another head accessory. Bartolo, who you get the quest from, is located next to the Blox Fruit dealer in the cafe, and he can only give the quest to you if you're above level 850. This accessory actually looks pretty cool. I mean, it's literally made out of gold. It buffs your melee and sword damage by 12.5% and gives you a 5% melee and sword attack cooldown reduction, which means you can use your sword abilities and your melee abilities a bit quicker. Overall, I don't think this accessory is that good because you have to complete a whole quest to get it. Next up on the list, we got the Dark Coat accessory, and this is actually the first mythical accessory that's on this list. And it can be obtained with a 2% chance after defeating the Darkbeard boss, who spawns after the Fist of Darkness is placed on the Dark Arena in the second sea. Damn, that's a lot of stuff to do just for an accessory. It gives you plus 600 energy, plus 600 health, and plus 15% Blox Fruit damage buff. And also looks really badass. And in my opinion, it's one of the best looking accessories in the whole game. But you do have to kill the Darkbeard boss for this, and that is no easy task. But overall, I would still say it's a really solid accessory. But I don't know if I'm going to be fighting the Darkbeard boss just to get the accessory. Next up, we got the Swan Glasses. And this is a legendary accessory that you can get with a 2.5% chance after defeating the Dawn Swan boss, who's located at the Swan Room in the second sea, and this is actually a part of the quest to getting to the third sea. It gives you plus 250 energy, plus 250 health, plus 8% overall damage, plus 8% defense against all attacks, plus 8% attack cooldown reduction, so you can use all your abilities 8% faster, and a 25% movement speed increase. And damn, that's a lot of buffs just for one accessory. But the cons are definitely that it's super difficult to obtain. I mean, a 2.5% drop chance, bro, you would literally have to kill the boss hundreds of times to get it. So if you're grinding this one, make sure you actually get the game pass because it'll make your life 10 times easier. Next up, we got the zebra cap, and this one's also a legendary accessory that can be obtained after defeating the order boss, who's located at the hot and cold island in the second sea. You actually need to deal at least 10% damage to him for it to count that you defeated him. And the effects for this accessory are plus 500 energy, plus 100 health, plus 10% sword damage, and a 15% Blox Fruit attack cooldown reduction. And the drop chance is literally 100%, so you won't have to grind this a lot to get it. And the hardest part about this is definitely actually defeating the boss itself, so make sure when you do the quest to kill the boss, you actually get some friends to help you. It's an overall a super solid accessory for the second sea. Next up, we got the Ghoul Mask accessory, and this is a rare accessory that can be bought from the El Perro NPC, who's located at the cursed ship in the second sea. And the cost of this mask is a simple 50 ectoplasm, and the effects for this are pretty decent. Plus 500 energy, 10% life leech on all melee attacks against players, 2.5% life leech on melee attacks against NPCs, and plus 35% movement speed. And for you guys who are wondering what life leech is, it means you heal back the amount of damage you do. Overall, this mask is really solid and is mostly used by people that are farming with the Buddha fruit. So overall, this accessory is mainly used for grinding, and the only con I would say is that it does not initially increase your health damage, but that doesn't even matter too much because you heal back a lot. Alrighty, moving on, we got the blue spiky coat. It's a rare accessory that can be obtained with a chance after defeating the cursed captain boss, who has a 1 out of 3 chance of spawning every night on the cursed ship, which is located in the second sea. This accessory grants the user 500 extra energy, plus 250 health, and plus 7.5% overall damage. But you only have a 1.5% chance of getting it dropped from the cursed captain, so you're gonna have to grind this guy a lot if you want to get it. Okay, so the next one on this list is called the red spiky coat, and the way you get it is exactly the same from the cursed captain boss. This one gives you plus 250 energy, plus 500 health, and plus 7.5% damage. But this one actually has a 2.5% drop chance, so it's slightly easier to get than the one before. So next on the list, we got the Valkyrie helmet. It's a legendary accessory that you can get after defeating the Rip Indra boss by dealing at least 10% damage to it. It gives you 600 extra energy, 600 extra health, and plus 15% sword damage. And you have a 100% chance of getting it after defeating the boss, so you don't need to grind that much to get it. But the boss is really difficult to defeat, literally the hardest boss in the game. So moving on, we got the bandana, and this bandana actually has 3 different forms. There's a red, green, and black bandana, and they give you the exact same stats. You can obtain it with a chance after defeating the elite pirate. This accessory gives you a total of 750 energy, plus 10% melee sword and gun damage, and a plus 80% movement speed. You literally become the Flash, and that's the main use for this. If you just want to get faster, and this is definitely the accessory that you want to look for. It's literally one of the best for speed in the whole game. But keep in mind, you only have a 50% drop chance, so you're gonna have to grind it a few times to get it. Next on the list, we got the Hunter's Cape, and guess what? This one also has 3 different colors: red, green, and black. This one gives you a plus 750 health, plus 10% melee sword and gun damage, and plus 80% movement speed. The exact same stats as the bandana, but in my opinion, the bandana looks a lot cooler. Next up, we got the pretty helmet, and you can get this by defeating 5 elite pirates and then talking to the Leuven NPC, who's located at the cafe at the castle on the sea in the third sea. This accessory gives you a plus 250 energy, plus 500 health, plus 10% melee damage, and plus 12.5% defense against all melee attacks, and a plus 50% movement speed on top of that. And this one is really recommended for Buddha users. Overall, a really decent accessory if you're trying to grind up to max level. Next up on the list, we got the Jaw Shield accessory, and you can get this after completing 5 quests from the player hunter and then talking to the Takamura NPC, who's located at the stairs to the left when you enter the castle on the sea. And a pretty cool thing about it is that the Captain Elephant NPC also wears this accessory, but he doesn't have any of the buffs and does not drop it. The effects of this accessory are plus 500 energy, plus 250 health, plus 12.5% melee damage, plus 10% defense against all melee attacks, and a plus 50% movement speed. And it might be the best accessory for Buddha players in my opinion. Next up on the list, we got the Musketeer hat, and you can get it by completing the Citizen quest, which you get from the Citizen NPC, located in the mansion on the floating turtle island, which is in the third sea. This accessory gives you a plus 12.5% increase in sword and gun damage, as well as a 12.5 cooldown reduction for guns and swords. Overall, a decent accessory if you're a sword or gun main. Next up, we got the Pilot helmet, and this is a rare accessory and you can get it after defeating the stone boss at Port Town on the third sea. This accessory gives you a whopping 130% increase in your movement speed, as well as 10% faster health regeneration and plus 250 health and energy. And this accessory is the best speed accessory in the whole game, and that's the main use of this accessory, just to make you run as fast as the Flash.
fast as boy.
Next accessory on the list is called Lay, and you can get it with a chance after defeating the Kilo Admiral boss who's located at the Great Tree in the second sea. This accessory has literally just one effect. It just increases your health regeneration by a whole 50%. But the drop chance is literally only 10 to 15, which means you need to grind this boss a butt ton of times before you get it. But overall, a really solid accessory, and if you pair it with the Phoenix Fruit's healing ability, you'll literally be unkillable. But other than increasing your regeneration speed, it doesn't really change anything with your health, energy, damage, defense, or movement speed, so it's kind of a mid accessory, but really good if you know how to use it. Next on the list, we got the Bear Ears accessory, and this is a rare accessory that can be obtained by rolling a random surprise from the Death King for 50 bones. This accessory gives you a total of plus 500 energy and plus 10% defense against all attacks. Next, we got the Golden Sun Hat, and the way you get it is the exact same as the previous one, by rolling with 50 bones. This accessory gives you a total of plus 500 health and plus 10% damage. So the next accessory is called the Holy Crown, and you can obtain this after killing the Soul Reaper boss. It gives you plus 500 energy, plus 500 health, plus 8% damage, plus 8% defense against all attacks, and plus 5% energy regeneration. And you have a 100% chance of dropping it after defeating the boss, but it is kind of difficult to obtain, not because the boss is super difficult to kill or anything, but just to spawn in the boss, you need to do a bunch of grinding. Moving on, we got one of my favorite accessories, the Pale Scarf. You can get it by defeating the Cake Prince or the Dough King. And both of these bosses are incredibly difficult to spawn in, so you're gonna have to do a lot of grinding to even fight them. It gives you a plus 15% Blox Fruit and sword damage increase, and it gives you 2 whole extra observation dodges. And next one is the best part. It increases your observation hockey's range by 10 times, which means you can literally see 10 times further than you would normally be able to see. And this accessory also has a 100% drop chance, so if you even fight the boss and deal 10% damage, you'll definitely get it. This is how you level up 10 times faster. And this is how you kill NPCs without them being able to kill you. These are 21 things you need to do when you start Blox Fruits. Okay, so the first thing every new Blox Fruits player should do is enter in a bunch of codes. And the reason for this is that codes are really simple to use and then payback is amazing. You got codes for a bunch of different things in this game. You have codes for double XP, you have codes for getting belly, and you have one code that gives you a free stat refund. But one thing I should mention with this tactic is that don't use every single double XP code as soon as you enter the game, and the reason for that is because you're not always going to be grinding levels, so you don't want to use them all as soon as you start. The way I recommend you guys to do it is to enter in one of your double XP codes and then grind for the amount of time that your double XP code is there. And then if you have to leave or get off Roblox, then you can do that. But if you have more time to grind, then enter in another double XP code and just continue this process till you use up all your double XP codes. This way you're only grinding while your double XP is active and you're not wasting even a single second of it. And the stat refund codes, obviously use them for stat refunds, and the belly codes, just use them if you want to buy something. Now I'm going to be telling you about the first quest that you have to get once you enter into Blox Fruits. So once you open up your Blox Fruits, you're going to be given 2 options. Either you start as a marine or you start as a pirate. But 99% of players choose pirate, and the reason for that is because pirates are just way cooler. So once you spawn into the pirate starter island, you want to head over to this NPC right over here and then click on him, and he gives you only one quest, which is bandits. All you got to do is just pummel all of these bandits to death, and you just keep repeating this until you unlock your next quest. If you're a marine, it's the exact same thing, but you spawn in on a different island called the Marine Starter Island. And here, when you talk to the quest giver, he gives you a quest for marine trainees, and the marine trainees have the exact same stats and levels as the bandits, so they take the same amount of time to kill. Once you pummel all the trainees, you just rinse and repeat until you're done with it. Then you just head over to the next island. Okay, so next up for you beginners, I'm going to be telling you about the 3 different type of fruits and Blox Fruits. There's elemental fruits, there's natural fruits, and there's beast fruits. Ideally, what you want to aim for in the first sea to be good at grinding is an elemental fruit. And the reason these fruits are really good in the first sea is because unless an enemy has hockey, they can't actually do any damage to you. And there's a button of players and NPCs in the first sea that don't have any hockey. And the fruit I recommend you guys to get is the light magmor or ice fruit. These are pretty good fruits for grinding to start off with. The smoke and blizzard fruits are the only elemental fruits in the game with no awakening. And the only common elemental fruit is the smoke fruit, but it's still a really good fruit for grinding. Of course, the dough fruit is the most expensive elemental fruit, so if you get your hands on this early, just count yourself lucky. Overall, elemental fruits are the best category in my opinion, because the literal best PvP fruit in the game, the awakened dough, is an elemental fruit. But I doubt you're going to be getting that in the first sea. Okay, so now I'm going to be telling you guys about the 2 beginner swords in Blox Fruits that every beginner should get their hands on. So the first sword that most of you might already know is the katana. The katana is a common sword that can be bought for a total of 1,000 belly. And getting it is really easy. It's located on the Pirate Starter Island, and you can buy it from the sword dealer. It's located both at the Pirate Starter Island and the Marine Starter Island, and the NPC that sells it to you is the sword dealer. And since this is a sword sword, the katana has a total of 2 different skills. The first one only has a 1 mastery requirement, so as soon as you buy the sword, you literally get it. And the second one only has a 20 mastery requirement, so it's also pretty easy to get. The first ability is called Quiet Rush, and what this does is the user dashes forward, dealing a bunch of slashes to the enemy. And the second one is Air Slash, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. You just shoot out a huge air slash, dealing a bunch of damage to the enemy. Overall, one of the best beginner swords in Blox Fruits, if not the best, and for the price, it's definitely worth it. Okay, so next up, moving on to the cutlass, this is a very similar sword to the katana. It also costs 1000 belly, and you can buy it from the sword dealer. And the abilities are literally the exact same thing. You have Quiet Rush with the 1 mastery requirement and the Air Slash with the 20 mastery requirement. Overall, I'm not really sure about the differences between these swords. They might just be retextures, so it's up to you which one you want to buy. Okay, so next up, I'm going to be telling you about a beginner secret that not a lot of players talk about, and I'm talking about the Fountain City quest. So the Fountain City is the final island on the first sea, and you're not actually supposed to go to it until you get the quest. But there's a pretty cool trick you can do before you even get that quest, and that is as soon as you spawn and head over to the Fountain City, then all you have to do is glitch an enemy behind the wall and then just do a bunch of damage to them, and just keep hitting them with your combat style until they die. And you might be scared thinking that you might die, but there's actually a pretty cool glitch in Blox Fruits where if you glitch an enemy behind a wall, you can actually do damage to them without them being able to do any damage to you. And this is really overpowered since this NPC gives you a butt ton of XP, so if you do this a bunch of times, you should literally get 50 levels. But it does take a huge amount of time to kill them, so I recommend that you guys only kill a few of them and not too many, because then it'll take too long and the levels you get won't even be worth it. Next up is another trick that's going to help you a ton when you're farming levels, and I'm talking about the compass. The compass isn't actually 100% accurate when it comes to leveling up really fast. The compass just shows you the next quest that's available for you to unlock, but it doesn't show you the best one to do to gain levels. And an example of this is the Pirate Village. The first quest you get at the Pirate Village are the pirates, and they're really close to each other and pretty easy to group up. But the second quest is brutes, and they're really far away from the quest giver, and they're super spaced out, which means even if you unlock the brute quest, you shouldn't do it, because with the amount of time it takes to walk to each brute and kill them, you can do the pirate quest way faster in a bunch of time, because they're way closer to each other. Even though the brute quest gives you more XP and money, you can finish around 3 pirate quests in the time you do 2 brute quests, just because of how bad the brute quest is. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to be telling you how to upgrade your stats properly as a pure beginner. As soon as you start off the game, you don't want to upgrade 3 of your stats evenly, like I've mentioned in my previous videos. You actually just want to pour all your stats into your melee damage. And the reason you want to do this is because you don't actually need a ton of defense when you start off. You already have 100 health, and the NPCs don't do that much damage. And the reason you want to put all of it into your melee is because you want to just dish out as much damage as possible. And the only time you should start upgrading your sword or defense stats is when you buy your first sword, or when you actually start dying to the damage from the NPCs. That's when you want to start upgrading them. If you're not dying to other NPCs, just don't even bother upgrading your defense stats, because it literally doesn't matter too much. Okay, so this next trick is also something that's really important when you're completing your quest, and it's to group up your enemies. And the reason you want to do this is if you have splash damage attacks, then you can deal damage to multiple NPCs because they're standing in the same place. So you don't need to waste unnecessary attacks to deal a bunch of extra damage when you can just use the same attack and deal the same amount of damage. And if you don't group up your enemies, then it just wastes a lot of time and damage, and you finish your quest way slower than if you group them up. So just make sure you're doing that. It's really easy to do and saves you a lot of time. Okay, so next up, this is a small bit of advice that you should probably know before you start playing the game, and it's that you take damage from the water, but that's only if you have a Blox Fruit equipped. And in my opinion, it's a really fair trade because Blox Fruits help you a ton in the game. But for some reason, if you actually want your ability to swim over having a Blox Fruit, then there's actually a way to remove your Blox Fruit. All you have to do is head over to the prison on the first sea, and at the back of it, there should be an NPC that lets you remove your Blox Fruit. But you have to pay him the hefty fee of 50,000 belly, and this amount of money might be kind of hard to get if you're still a first sea player, but it depends how far along you are. Okay, so now I'm going to be telling you about a pretty important game mechanic that you can use once you start the game, and I'm talking about the dash function. Most of you should already know about this, but if you're a complete beginner, you might not. So this ability is pretty self-explanatory. You dash when you click the button Q, and there's actually a variety of things that this helps with. One of the uses is to get to places really fast. The other one is to dash above water so you don't actually take any damage while you're above it. And the third one is while fighting enemies, and I'm talking about PvP and against NPCs. So when you're in a PvP fight, you can use this ability to just dash around, be really unpredictable so your opponent just misses all of their shots. And when you're fighting NPCs, you can use this dash trick. So all you have to do is hit an NPC and really quickly dash away. It's not 100% guaranteed that you won't take any damage, but it's a really good way to ensure that you don't take a lot of damage. And the reason for that is NPCs actually take a moment to register that you're standing in front of them, so by the time they notice you're there, you can actually just hit them and instantly dash away. And there's some enemies that are really slow to attack, and this trick is really useful against them. Overall, a pretty decent trick, and just make sure you're using it everywhere you go. Okay, so now this is something that's gonna save you a bunch of time when you're just roaming around in Blox Fruits. And I'm talking about setting your spawn barn. You should definitely be setting your spawn point at almost every island that you visit. And the reason for this is even if you go off the island later to maybe buy a fruit, or spin the Blox Fruit gacha, or anything else, you can just simply teleport to the island where your main quest is. And this is going to save you a butt ton of time. But the only thing I will tell you guys is do not set your spawn point at the prison. And the reason for this is that there's actually no way to get off the prison unless you have a specific type of fruit, because the prison doesn't have any boat spawns. So unless you have no devil fruit and you can literally swim in the water, I don't advise setting your spawn point there. It's kind of dumb. Okay, so this next trick I'm going to talk about is really simple and really easy to get done. It's chest grinding. And a lot of you new players watching might be wondering what chest grinding is. It's simply just walking around collecting every chest, and then once you collected every single chest in the area that you're farming, instead of waiting for the chest to respawn again, you're just going to simply server hop and repeat the process. A place that I mentioned a lot of times in my videos is the temple in Upper Sky, so I'm going to be telling you about a different location that's really easy to get access to. It's the Pirate Village, and a lot of beginners chest farm here. Get their hands on some really quick and easy cash. I'm not 100% sure where all the chests on the island are. You can simply search up a video for that, but I do know that it's an excellent spot to farm chests for beginners. Okay, so this next technique is really simple to do if you're a beginner. All you have to do is get your hands on the smoke fruit, and everyone knows the smoke fruit is pretty easy to get. The reason you want the smoke fruit is because it's the cheapest and easiest to get elemental fruit in Blox Fruits. It only costs 100,000 belly, and I know that's a bit expensive for beginners. You should be able to rack up the belly with the chest farming method from before. And once you get that, you should definitely buy this fruit. It's literally a common fruit, so it'll be in stock in no time. And also obviously has elemental immunity, which means you won't take damage from enemies unless they have Haki. And the reason you want this specific fruit is because of its F ability, Smoke Bomber, and you only need a 10 mastery to unlock it. What this ability does is it turns the user into a smoke, gaining the flight ability, and you continuously drop smoke bombs from above you. And using this technique, you can grind enemies without them being able to do any damage to you. Just make sure you're flying high enough above them. If you do all of this, you should be able to just grind out a bunch of enemies. But I still think the ice, magma, or light fruit are better for the first seed. And the overall best grinding fruit in the game is the Buddha fruit. But as a beginner, you won't be getting that in any time. So the smoke fruit is definitely what you want to keep your eye on. Okay, so next up, I'm going to be telling you about two very important NPCs that you should be aware of once you start playing Blox Fruits. The first one is the Blox Fruit Dealer, and you cannot miss this NPC. It's an NPC that's located at the Pirate Starter Island and the Marine Starter Island, so you must have seen this. What the Blox Fruit Dealer is, it's an NPC that will sell you the abilities of any Blox Fruit. You just simply have to wait for the fruit to be in stock. And obviously, the more powerful fruits will have a way lower chance of being in stock, so you're gonna have to wait a lot longer if you want to get those. That's why I recommended the Smoke Fruit for the previous trick. Next up is the Blox Fruit Gacha, and what the Blox Fruit Gacha is an NPC that lets you spin for a random Blox Fruit. But unlike the Blox Fruit Dealer, you actually get a physical version of this fruit, which means you can also drop it to someone else. The amount of money you have to pay for a spin on the Blox Fruit Gacha differs depending on what your level is. If you're level 50, you have to pay only 32,000 belly for a roll. But if you're the max level, then you have to pay 400,000 belly for just one roll. But the bad thing is that the fruits that you get are completely random, so you could get anything ranging from the leopard fruit to the kilo fruit. So roll at your own risk. Also remember to get Raid Shadow Legends with my link in the description. Using it, you get a bunch of free items. I'm going to be telling you some super secret things about every single awakened fruit in Blox Fruits. Okay, so first up, we got the Flame Fruit, and this is an elemental type Blox Fruit that was added in the first update of the game. It costs a total of 250,000 belly or 550 Robux from the Blox Fruit Dealer. It's an uncommon fruit, and to fully awaken it, you need a total of 14,500 fragments. Overall, a pretty decent fruit, but it is the weakest fruit when it comes to the awakenings. The first ability is called Blue Fire Bullets, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You shoot 5 to 6 explosive blue sparks which explode upon contact, and they deal a good amount of damage with each hit. Next up is the 40 mastery ability called Prominence Burn, and this ability costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, you just dish out a bunch of fire right in front of you, so if anyone's standing next to you, they're gonna get burned real bad. Next up, we got Flaming Vortex, and this is the C ability. It requires 80 mastery and costs a total of 4,000 fragments to awaken. And this is similar to one of the Bomb Fruits abilities. It's basically where you create a flaming vortex and you boost yourself up into the sky, dealing a butt ton of damage to everything around it. Next up, we got the V ability with the 110 mastery. It costs a total of 5,000 fragments to awaken this ability. And for this one, it's literally just like a spirit bomb, but more like a fire bomb. And you just create a bunch of glowing energy above your head and you can shoot it wherever you want. Moving on to the movement ability. This one only has a 10 mastery requirement and it costs a total of 2,000 fragments to awaken. Similar to the Flame Fruit's normal flight ability, just pretty much the same but slightly faster. Overall, this is a decent fruit for medium and long range combat and also good for grinding bosses. And it is kind of like a worse light fruit. But overall, a really decent fruit for how much it costs. So next up, we got the Ice Fruit, and this is also an elemental elemental type fruit, and it costs a total of 350,000 belly, or 750 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. It's an uncommon fruit, and it costs a total of 14,500 fragments to fully awaken. And a pretty cool thing about this fruit is that you get two different passive abilities. The first one, which lets you walk on water because it turns everything under you into ice, and the other one is a trident, and it's literally just like a free sword, except that you don't even need to upgrade your sword stat points to use it, which is pretty cool. But moving on to the actual moves of the awakened ice fruit. The first ability, which has a 1 mastery requirement and costs 500 fragments to awaken, is the Cold Storm. And for this one, you just create a small tornado in front of you. It's not that powerful of ability, but it's mostly used for AoE damage. The next awakened ability is called Glacial Sword. This is the X ability, has a 25 mastery requirement, and you need 3,000 fragments to awaken it. And for this one, it's similar to the unawakened version. You just create a huge iceberg in the direction you want to use the attack, and it just deals a butt ton of damage. Next ability is the Sea ability. It has a 50 mastery requirement. You need 4,000 fragments to awaken it. It's called Frozen Dragon, and it's kind of what it sounds like. You just shoot out a huge frozen dragon, and it deals a butt ton of damage to everything that surrounds you. And it's also really fast, so it's almost impossible to dodge. Next ability is called Absolute Zero. This one has a 100 mastery requirement and costs 5,000 fragments to awaken. For this one, you just shoot a bunch of ice all around you on the floor, and if anyone is standing next to you or gets caught in this attack, their character will freeze for 5 seconds, allowing you to deal a butt ton of damage to them. Moving on, we got the F ability, and this one has a 0 mastery requirement because you don't actually have this in the unawakened version. It costs 2,000 fragments to get this move, and it's exactly what it sounds like, ice skating. It literally just lets you ice skate on land and use zip across a lot faster, but not as fast as some other fruits on this list. Overall, this fruit is really good for level farming because it's an elemental, and you also have a passive sword ability, and all of the attacks from this fruit do AoE damage, and that's what makes them really good for grinding. Overall, a pretty solid fruit and definitely worth the price. Alright, moving on, we got the sand fruit, and this is also an elemental type fruit, and it costs a total of 420,000 belly, or 850 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. And this fruit recently got its awakening update, which was in update 17. And this fruit also costs a total of 14,500 fragments to fully awaken. And a kind of side note about this fruit is that you actually take double damage in water, so you die faster to water than all the other fruit users, unless of course you have the shark race. But moving on to the moves, the first ability, the Z, is called Desert Blade. It has a 1 mastery requirement and costs 500 fragments to awaken. And Desert Blade is exactly what it sounds like. You just shoot out a bunch of spikes from the floor in the direction you're pointing at, and they deal a butt ton of damage. And these come out really fast, so they're really hard to dodge. Moving on to the X ability, this one is called Sand Coffin. It has a 40 mastery requirement and costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, you basically just cover your enemy in a ball of sand, taking them into the sky and dealing a bunch of damage to them. And this ability is almost impossible to dodge because it literally locks the character in place and prevents them from moving. Next ability is the Sea ability. This one is called Sandstorm. It has an 80 mastery requirement and costs 4,000 fragments to awaken. And this one is kind of similar to the Awakened Flames ability. It's literally just a sand tornado that swings your opponent around and does a bunch of damage to them. Next ability is called Deep Sand, and this is the V ability. It has a 120 mastery requirement and costs 5,000 fragments to awaken. You just create like a sand hurricane around you, and you just deal a butt ton of damage to everything around you. Really overpowered and almost impossible to escape. Next up is the Movement ability, the F ability. This one has a 15 mastery requirement and costs 2,000 fragments to awaken. And this flying ability is very similar to the Unawakened Flames flying ability, but instead of fire that makes you fly, it's sand. Overall, this fruit is really good and has excellent combo potential when it's awakened. And the Desert Blade ability has a really good hitbox and long range. And obviously, it's really good for killing bosses as well because, well, that's just what the sand fruit does. Overall, a really decent fruit and definitely worth the price. Next up, we got the Dark Fruit. And this is also an elemental type fruit. It costs a total of 500,000 belly or 950 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. And this fruit is actually used in the game by the raid boss Darkbeard and the Possessed Mummy NPCs, along with the Elite Pirates and Diablo. And guess what? This fruit also costs 14,500 fragments to fully awaken. The first ability, the Z ability, is called Dimensional Slash. This one has a 1 mastery requirement and 500 fragments to awaken. Dimensional Slash does exactly what it sounds like. It just cuts a really deep hole, and even if you're behind walls, this one can hit you. Hence why it's called Dimensional Slash, because it cuts through everything. Next ability is the X ability. It has a 40 mastery requirement and costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. And it's called Abyssal Darkness. And for this one, you just shoot out a bunch of dark tentacles, hitting everything that you're aiming at. And it's also similar to one of the Spider Fruit's abilities. Next ability is the Sea ability. This one has an 80 mastery requirement and costs 4,000 fragments to fully awaken. And it's called Endless Hole. It's where you just create a huge hole around you, similar to one of the Love Fruit's abilities, and it deals damage to everything caught in that endless hole. Next ability is the V ability. This one is called World of Darkness. It has a 110 mastery requirement and costs 5,000 fragments to fully awaken. And for this one, you also kind of create a miniature spirit bomb, but that spirit bomb actually turns into a black hole and then ends ends up exploding, which in my opinion is one of the coolest abilities in the game. Next up is the F ability, and this one is called Ghastly Step. This costs 2,000 fragments to awaken, and it's literally just a flash step ripoff. And this is probably one of the worst movement abilities in the game, because unless you're looking for 2 flash steps, I don't think this has that much practical use. It's just unoriginal if you ask me. Overall, this fruit is really good, and this is probably one of the best fruits in the game for grinding bosses because of its 1v1 potential. But overall for grinding, I don't think it's that worth it. Moving on, we got the light fruit. This is also an elemental type fruit, and it costs 650,000 belly or 1,100 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. It's a rare fruit, and guess what? Once again, the fruit costs 14,500 fragments to fully awaken. And similar to the ice fruit, you also have a passive ability with this, and it's literally just a light spear. Moving on to the skills, the awakened Z ability is called Divine Arrow. It has a 1 mastery requirement and costs 500 fragments to awaken. It's where you can charge up a bow to have a maximum of 3 shots, and then you can just shoot it wherever you want. It does area of damage and does a bunch of it. Next ability is called Hand of the Emperor. This has a 40 mastery requirement along with 3,000 fragments to awaken. And this ability is pretty cool. As long as you're holding it down, it just shoots a big ray of light, and you can point it anywhere you want. And as long as it's on the character you're aiming for, it'll just continue to deal a butt ton of damage. Moving on to the C ability. This one is called Light Speed Destroyer, and boy is it a better version of its unawakened move. It has an 80 mastery requirement along with 4,000 fragments to awaken. It's where you literally just dash around a bunch of times with light beams and you slam into your user, dealing a butt ton of damage to them. Next ability is the V ability, and this one is called Wrath of God. It has a 110 mastery requirement and costs 5,000 fragments to fully awaken. This is where you create a huge zone around you, and it just starts hailing down a bunch of light meteors, and they deal a lot of damage. So if you get caught in this ability, you're probably gonna be dead. Next ability is called Shining Flight. For the unawakened version of this ability, you get a light beam where you can just fly around light speed, and this is the fastest movement ability in the game unless you count the portal fruit. And for the awakening of this move, you actually get to change directions with the light fruit, but it's not as smooth as the flame. But nevertheless, you can change directions, making it a better version of the previous ability. Overall, this fruit is really good. It has high damage, a lot of long range attacks, and literally the fastest flying fruit in the game. And did I forget to mention its amazing combo potential? Overall, a really solid fruit and one of my personal favorites. Alright, next up we got the magma fruit, and this fruit is also an elemental type fruit, and it costs 850,000 belly or 1,300 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. And this fruit is also used by the Magma Admiral, who's located at the volcano on the first sea. And once again, the fruit costs 14,500 fragments to fully awaken. This fruit has 2 different passive abilities. It gives you the ability to walk on water, but you only get this after you awaken it. And the second passive ability is lava immunity, which means as long as you have this fruit equipped and you step in lava, you will not take any damage. So the first ability of the awakened fruit is called Magma Shower. This has a 1 mastery requirement and costs 500 fragments to fully awaken. And for this ability, it's exactly what it sounds like. You just shower a bunch of magma blobs directly at where you're aiming, and they actually stay for a bunch of time. And did I mention they also deal a bunch of damage? The next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Volcanic Assault. It has a 45 mastery requirement and costs 3,000 fragments to fully awaken. And this ability, you just dash straight forward and you lock a user in place and you deal a bunch of damage to them. Moving on to the C ability. This one is called Great Magma Hound. It has a 95 mastery requirement and costs 4,000 fragments to fully awaken. And for this one, you just shoot a huge magma blob to wherever you're aiming, and it deals a lot of damage. And I'm pretty sure this is the strongest ability in the game if you count the extra damage from the blob. Moving on to the V ability. It's called Volcanic Storm and has a 140 mastery requirement. It costs a total of 5,000 fragments, and you just start raining a bunch of magma blobs into any one place that you're aiming. And they do a bunch of damage, and they stay for quite a bit of time. So even after you've taken the initial damage from the hit, there's also going to be a bunch of excessive damage done to you. Moving on to the F ability, the movement ability. This one is called Beast Ride. It has a 10 mastery requirement and costs 2,000 fragments to awaken. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You literally just ride a beast, and you can control exactly where it goes. And once you let go of it, it flies off into wherever you're aiming and just crashes, dealing a bunch of damage. Damn, this fruit is really good. Even the movement ability does damage. Overall, this fruit is known as literally the best fruit in the game for grinding, if it wasn't for the Awakened Buddha. But the Awakened Buddha is really hard to get, so this is the second substitution everyone goes for. And overall, just a really solid fruit for PvP, but its main purpose is for grinding. Alright, next fruit on the list is the Quake fruit. This fruit is the first fruit on this list to reach 1 million belly, or 1,500 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. This fruit has a 6% chance of being in stock, or a 6.4% chance of spawning in-game. It's a legendary fruit, and guess what? This time it costs 17,000 fragments to awaken. A butt ton of fragments more than the previous fruits. The first ability is called Fatal Demolisher. It has a 1 mastery requirement and costs 1,000 fragments to awaken. And what this ability does is it locks a user in place and just deals a butt ton of damage to them by punching them, and you literally shatter reality itself. There's literally a crack on your screen, and it looks really badass. The X ability is called Air Crusher, and this one has a 50 mastery requirement. It costs 3,000 fragments to awaken, and you just shoot out a huge ball of energy, dealing a butt ton of damage to wherever you hit it. Next ability is called Spatial Shockwave. This is the C ability of the fruit, has a 100 mastery requirement and 5,000 fragments to awaken it. And for this one, it's kind of like a double version of the first ability, Fatal Demolisher. But instead of one shockwave, you dish out 2 huge shockwaves, one to your left and one to your right. Just make sure you don't aim it wrong, because it would be a huge waste. Moving on to the V ability. This one is called Sea Quake, and for this one, you literally bring in a tsunami from all 4 sides of you, and they wipe out everything in your way. But since they cover a huge amount of ground and it's literally impossible to dodge, they don't deal as much damage as you think they would. But overall, still a really solid ability since it's basically guaranteed damage. Overall, this fruit is really decent because it has amazing damage, amazing knockback, and really large hitboxes for all its abilities, so it's almost impossible to miss with all of them. But the one bad thing I would say about this is not as optimal for grinding because it doesn't have a lot of AoE attacks. But overall, still a really solid fruit. Alright, moving on. Next fruit on the list is the Buddha fruit, and surprise, surprise, it is the first fruit on the list that is not an elemental fruit. It is actually a beast type fruit. It costs a total 1,200,000 belly, or 1,650 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. And this fruit going back to the 14,500 fragments to fully awaken it. Did I mention it's also a legendary fruit? So the first ability of this fruit, the Z ability, is called Shift. It has a 1 mastery requirement and 500 fragments to awaken it. And basically what it does is just makes the Buddha transformation a decent amount bigger and makes it look a lot cooler. Also gives it a small passive ability in which every time you jump, you deal a bunch of damage to everything around you. And most people that use the Buddha fruit only awaken this ability for the fruit because all Buddha users only need the first ability. The rest are kind of useless. But nevertheless, moving on to the X ability, it's called Heavenly Impact. And for this one, you just slam your fist into the ground, dealing a huge amount of damage to everything around you. And this ability also has a 1 mastery requirement, but it costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. Next up, moving on to the C ability, it's called Light of Annihilation. It has a 100 mastery requirement and costs 4,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, what the character basically does is just charge up a huge blast and shoots it wherever their cursor is aiming, and it deals a butt ton of damage. Next ability, which is the V ability, is called Twilight of the God. It has a 200 mastery requirement and costs 5,000 fragments to awaken. This one, the Buddha jumps up into the sky, and then similar to one of the Light Fruits abilities, you just start dishing out damage to everything that surrounds you. And this is incredibly hard to dodge, especially if you're standing next to it. Next ability, the Movement ability, which is actually a brand new ability and is not there in the unawakened version, is called Retribution Dash. And for this, the user just dashes forward. And dashing is not the only thing it does. If there's a player in the way, it grabs them and slams them into the floor, dealing a bunch of damage. It has a 0 mastery because obviously it's a new ability, and it costs 2,000 fragments to get. Overall, the Buddha fruit is really solid fruit. It's known as the best grinding fruit in the game, but when it comes to one-on-one PvP, it's not as high up. But being the best grinding fruit in the game is more than enough to convince you to get this, because it's literally the perfect fruit, and you're not going to be needing another fruit until you max level. Alright, moving on. Next fruit on the list is the Spider fruit. This fruit costs a total of 1,500,000 belly, or 1,800 Robux from the Blox Fruit dealer. It's a legendary fruit and one of the best PvP fruits in the game, and its awakening costs a total of 17,300 fragments, and it's one of the most expensive fruits to awaken. The first ability is called Thermal Laceration. It has a 1 mastery requirement with 800 fragments to awaken it, and it's kind of like a sword ability. You just dish out a bunch of flying slashes towards where your enemy is, and you deal a bunch of damage to them. Next ability, which is the X ability, is called Silk Prison. It has a 50 mastery requirement and costs 3,500 fragments to awaken, and it's kind of similar to what the name implies. It's literally a silk prison, so basically you just rain down a bunch of strings where your cursor is pointed at, and then it creates a huge prison around the user, but it only stays for a few seconds until it just dices them up. Doesn't deal as much damage as you think it would. It's still a pretty decent attack. Next ability is called Eternal White. It has a 100 mastery requirement and costs 4,500 fragments to fully awaken. And for this one, you just shoot out a bunch of huge strings from the floor in the direction of your cursor, and they deal a butt ton of damage to the user. Next ability is called Heavenly Punishment. It has a 225 mastery requirement and costs 6,000 fragments to fully awaken. And this ability is really cool because it actually matches the color of your hockey. So if you have rainbow hockey, it constantly changes color. What this ability does, it just shoots out a bunch of strings in the direction where your cursor is pointing, and it's a really powerful attack because it deals a butt ton of damage, and it stays as long as you hold it. Next up is the Movement ability, Spider's Highway. It has a 15 mastery requirement and costs 2,500 fragments to awaken. And this ability literally turns you into Spider-Man because you just get to swing across things. But I don't know where the web's actually connecting to because there's no buildings inside. Overall, a really solid fruit. It has really high damage, a lot of combo potential. And pretty much the only bad thing about this fruit is the unawakened versions. And the fact that you need really good aim to use this in PvP. Because if you don't have good aim, then all of your attacks are going to end up missing and you'll probably be losing the fight. Alrighty, the next fruit we got on the list is the Phoenix fruit. And this fruit is also beast type Blox fruit, just like the Buddha. It costs a total of 1,800 belly or 2,000 Robux from the Blox fruit dealer. And this fruit needs a whopping 18,500 fragments to fully awaken. And it's tied with a different fruit to being the costliest fruits to awaken in the whole game. So the awakened Phoenix has one passive ability, and it's not really a passive ability, it's kind of just like an extra ability. It has a 0 mastery requirement and it costs 4,000 fragments to awaken. And it's just using your right click button. You just kind of dash forward with the Phoenix fruit and deal a bunch of damage to wherever you land at. Next we got the Z ability, and this one is called Cremation Cannon. It has a 1 mastery requirement and 500 fragments to awaken. And for this one, you just shoot a huge projectile forward, and once it crashes, it bursts out into a bunch of other different projectiles. It just creates a huge chain reaction doing a bunch of damage. Next ability is called Blue Flames, and this has a 90 mastery requirement and costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, as long as you're holding it down, it just keeps healing you with an unlimited amount of hold time. Just make sure you have enough energy for it. It literally burns through it. And you can also heal people that are allied with you, making it really useful. Next ability is called Flame Exodus, and this has a 160 mastery requirement and costs 4,000 fragments to fully awaken. And for this one, you dash up into the sky with the Phoenix wings and then you crash back down, dealing a butt ton of damage to wherever you land. Next up, we got the V ability, and this one is called Blazing Plumage. And for this one, the user basically just transforms themselves into a huge dragon. And the change between this and the unawakened version is this transformation provides a 15% damage reduction and a 10% damage buff. And you can also fly passively once you're in the transformation, making it really useful. Next up, we got the flying ability, which is Swift Flight. It has a 30 mastery requirement and it costs 2,000 fragments to awaken. But it's not that useful if you have the transformation equipped because you're already passively flying. But until you reach a mastery of 250, the Swift Flight ability is going to be just fine for you. And to awaken the Phoenix fruit, you actually need to go through a kind of extra quest. You need to get a 400 mastery on the normal Phoenix fruit, and then you need to talk to a guy called the Stick Scientist, who's located at the Sea of Treats. And then he'll sell you a Phoenix raid chip for 1,000 fragments or 1 million belly. And purchasing the chip has a 2-hour cooldown. So you can only do these raids in intervals of 2 hours, and even then it's not confirmed that you win the raid guaranteed. So if you're trying to grind some Phoenix raids, just make sure you got your friends to help you. It makes it 10 times easier. Alright, next up we got the Rumble fruit, and this fruit costs a whopping 2,100,000 belly or 2,100 Robux from the Blox fruit dealer. This fruit is a legendary type fruit, and obviously it's an elemental. And the Thunder God NPC at Upper Sky also uses this fruit. First ability for this fruit is called Lightning Beast. It has a 1 mastery requirement and costs 500 fragments to awaken. For this one, you just shoot a huge lightning projectile to wherever your cursor is aiming, and it deals a bunch of damage when it lands. And it also moves really fast, so it's kind of hard to dodge. The X ability is called Thunderstorm. This one has a 90 mastery requirement and costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, you just create a huge lightning storm around you and deals a butt ton of damage. So if anyone's standing next to you when you use this ability, it's literally impossible to dodge. Next ability is called Clear Sky Judgment. It has a 160 mastery requirement and costs 4,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, wherever you point your cursor, you just summon a bunch of lightning and it deals a butt ton of damage. So you do not want to get caught in this attack. Next ability is called Thunderball Destruction. It has a 250 mastery requirement and costs 5,000 fragments. And for this one, you just spawn in a huge electrical spirit bomb, and wherever you aim and throw it, it just decimates that area. It's a really powerful attack, but the bad thing is it's kind of slow, so people can easily dodge it if they're fast enough. Next up, we got the movement ability, Electric Flash. And this is also a copy of the normal dash function, but you can use it 3 times and it's slightly faster. Overall, just a pretty wasted opportunity for a different movement ability, if you ask me. Overall, this fruit is really good. It has elemental immunity, so people need hockey to be able to do damage to you. But one con of this fruit is that rubber users are immune to all damage from this fruit. So if you're fighting against a rubber user, that's probably a fight you should not be taking because they're definitely going to be winning. Alright, now we got the fruit awakening that you have all been waiting for. The only mythical fruit in the game with an awakening, the Dough fruit. The Dough fruit is an elemental Blox fruit, and it costs a total of 2,800,000 belly or 2,400 Robux from the Blox fruit dealer. And this fruit is used by the Cake Prince and the Dough King, and it's a really powerful fruit when it comes to PvP. Its awakening costs 18,500 fragments, making it one of the most difficult fruits to awaken in the game. So moving on to the abilities, we actually got a passive M1 ability from the awakening, which costs 4,000 fragments. And for this one, it's literally just called Dough Fist. And if you just click your M1 button, you can do a bunch bunch of passive damage to people. So even when your abilities are on cooldown, you have something to do damage with. Moving on to the Z ability, we've got Missile Jab, and this costs 500 fragments. It has a cooldown of 9 seconds, and you shoot a huge projectile towards your enemy, or wherever your cursor is aiming. Next ability is called Pastry River, and this one actually has 2 different forms. For the first form, you spawn in a huge spike from underneath the ground, and the next form happens when you use this ability while you're midair. You kind of just pull your opponent towards you and just send them flying around, getting punched by a bunch of dough fists. This ability costs 3,000 fragments to awaken. Moving on to the next ability, Piercing Close Sign. It costs 4,000 fragments to awaken. And for this one, you roll towards your enemy and you grab them with a huge dough fist, swing them around and slam them into the ground. It does a lot of damage, and once you get caught in it, you cannot escape. Next up, we got Dough Fist Filleted, and this costs 5,000 fragments to awaken, and it's a way better ability than its unawakened part. It locks the user in place and just starts pummeling them with a bunch of dough fists, dealing a butt ton of damage. But this ability does not do AoE damage, but it's definitely worth it because of how much damage it does to one person. Next up, we got the F ability, Scorching Donut, and this one costs 2,000 fragments to awaken, and it basically upgrades the unawakened donut. And what you can do with this is you can go straight up walls, you can drive over water, and you even do a bunch of damage to enemies when you run over them. Overall, the dough fruit is one of the best fruits in the game and one of my personal favorites. It's just a really satisfying fruit. The sound effects are amazing, the effects are amazing, and it's literally the best PvP fruit in the whole of Blox Fruits.